bioresorbable scaffolds. Bioresorbable scaffold provide a support to the vessel wall for a definite period of time after angioplasty, and eventually it get resorbed. So because of this, it is considered to be an attractive form of stenting the coronary arteries. It is considered to be a fourth revolution in coronary interventions. The first bioresorbable scaffold was developed in 1980 by Stark and co-workers, and it was used in animal models. Now coming on to types of bioresorbable scaffolds, two types of BRS are under testing: polymer-based scaffolds and metallic scaffolds. The polymer-based scaffolds, usual resorption time is about 3 to 4 years, and for metallic scaffolds, the usual resorption time is about 1 year. Polymer-based bioresorbable scaffold should have high tensile strength and optimal elongation to allow creation of low-profile balloon expandable device. So it is available mainly in two polymers. One is poly L lactic acid and another one is poly D L lactic acid, containing the both L and D form of lactic acid monomers. The difference between the two is in poly L lactic acid, it will be semi-crystalline, slower degradation rate, and has got higher tensile strength. The disadvantage is the slower degradation. And coming on to poly DL lactic acid, it has amorphous, low tensile strength, higher elongation time, and rapid degradation time. Here, the low tensile strength is a disadvantage. At present, these are the only two polymers that are used for manufacturing bioresorbable scaffolds. Among these includes there are many bioresorbable scaffolds. Among them, the common ones which we can easily remember ones are Absorb BVS, Dissolve NX, Dissolve CX, Dissolve NTX, which are containing PLLA, and ART bioresorbable scaffold, which contains poly D L lactic acid. Coming on to metallic bioresorbable scaffolds, it is considered to be attractive because it has, in the initial stage, it has the potential to perform same like conventional metallic stents in the early phase, and also has got the advantage of subsequent resorption. Well, and late in the later stage, it has the advantage of subsequently getting resorbed. The usual time of resorption of these metallic bioresorbable scaffolds is about 1 year. The ideal metallic bioresorbable scaffolds should have the following three properties. That is, the mechanical properties should be similar to conventional stent with a non-thrombogenic surface, predictable and steerable bioresorption kinetics it should have, and it should cause no or minimal inflammatory reaction. These criteria are fulfilled by iron and magnesium. That's why those are used in bioresorbable scaffolds. Example I'll show later. Then comes
Hey, how come metallic can be bioresorbable, man?
metallic is bioresorbable. The mechanism I will tell you. One, magnesium undergoes resorbable by corrosion, and iron by getting converted into Fe2 plus to Fe3 plus, it will get converted and taken up by cells.
Okay.
They are bioresorbable. They are not much commonly used. They are still under trials, not yet used in humans. Okay, characteristics of ideal bioresorbable scaffolds. These are the important properties which should ideally match in bioresorbable scaffolds, but none of the present BVS fulfill all these criteria. It should have a high tensile strength. Strain to failure capacity should be high before resorption to allow creation of a low profile balloon expandable design for easy deliverability and flexibility. Then it should have an adequate radial strength. It should have a moderate degradation in a predictable fashion for a defined period. It should leave no residual matrix. Degradation product should be biocompatible and non-toxic, and which should not cause any excessive inflammatory reaction. Should not be thrombogenic. It should be the polymer should be easily processable and sterilizable. Then it should have acceptable shelf life. and it should be non-inferior to conventional stents at early stage and superior on long-term follow-up. None of the presently available biovascular scaffolds fulfill these criteria. Then here is a table. I think there is its quality is not so good. I will take it again and post it. So the most commonly used and which has been studied extensively is the absorbable vascular scaffold. It is from Abbott Vascular. This contains poly L-lactic acid as the polymer and has got the coating of DL lactic acid. And here the important thing to note is the strut size, which is about 157 micrometer. The strut size is one important thing that that determines the risk of having this stent thrombosis. So as the strut size increases, the risk of the risk of having stent thrombosis increases. So this large size is considered to be one of the risk factor for stent thrombosis. Similarly, other dissolve NX, dissolve CX, dissolve NTX, and this Magmarix is one of the magnesium containing stents. It contains magnesium and poly L lactic acid. And one more is IBS. This is the one which contains iron and PDLLA. And this important thing to note is its strut size is only about 70 micrometer. Then coming on to vascular resorptive therapy. So based on absorbed stent, so it was in animal studies, it was found that there are 3 stages when absorbed stent is implanted. So the stage of revascularization, this occurs immediately after the stent implantation and lasts for about 0 to 3 months. And then comes the stage of restoration. This is the stage in which the vessel is restored back to its normal pre-implantation, pre-stenting geometry. So this takes about 3 to 9 months. This is the stage during which the scaffold, the bioabsorbable scaffold, becomes discontinuous and get embedded in the neointima. That is, it get partially resolved and get embedded in the neointima, so that its restraining effect on the vessel is relieved, and the vessel is relieved from the cage, and it will restore back to the normal geometry. So its normal curves and bends will be restored back to the pre-stenting period. Will be restored back similar to pre-stenting time. So it also restores the vasomotor function in about 9 to 12 months. Then comes the stage of resorption, during which complete resorption of the scaffold takes place, and the vascular once this is done, the vascular response will be totally restored, and the normal vascular response to physiological stimuli and the release of normal nitric oxide and other endothelial chemical factors will be restored. Then coming on to absorb stent, the process of resorption. What is the mechanism of resorption of these stents? In relation to these polymeric stents, majority of them contains lactic acid, either D-lactic acid or L-lactic acid, which will get converted to carbon dioxide and which will get converted into carbon dioxide and water. It gets breakdown to carbon dioxide and water, and does get eliminated. It will be both carbon dioxide and water and non-toxic substances, and it get entered into the systemic circulation. In relation to iron bioresorbable stent, it will undergo conversion from Fe2 plus form to Fe3 plus, ferrous to ferric form, and then it get internalized into the cells. And in relation to magnesium bioresorption, it occurs mainly by the process of corrosion, and it will be accelerated in acidic milieu. So this is the same thing given in the form of a table. Coming on to the advantages of these bioabsorbable vascular scaffolds over drug-eluting stent, shown in initial small non-randomized control trials. So initial small non-randomized control trials showed that these BVS had good results. Hence, it was initially found to be attractive. So in the initial non-randomized trials, it was shown that bioresorbable stents may preserve the vessel geometry because of its better flexibility and conformability than drug-eluting stents. At 6 months, the vascular geometry was found to completely restored to the pre-implant state. Restoration of the physiological vasomotor response, that is conversion of hemodynamic forces to chemical stimuli, adaptive shear stress, late luminal gain, late expansive remodeling, once bioresorption is complete. Theoretically, there were absence of residual foreign material and functional endothelial coverage can reduce the risk of very late stent thrombosis, and hence thinking of giving short-term DAPT rather than because of this, since there is absence of there is no residual foreign material left with these bioresorbable stents. After resorption, they thought we can compromise the duration of DAPT. But in reality, with randomized control trials, such a result did not happen, and the results were disappointing. Rather, there was increased risk of very late stent thrombosis. So then various randomized control trials came, like Absorb 2, Absorb China, Absorb Japan. These are all considered done in non-ACS patients. Absorb STEMI Trophy 2 was done in ACS patients. Then came Absorb 3, AIDA, multiple trials came. They compared they looked at early stent thrombosis, late stent thrombosis, and very late stent thrombosis. In all these trials, it was found, we can see that this is this part represents the one favoring okay, here it favors the Zine's drug-eluting stent. This part favors bioresorbable stent. So in all these, it can be found that the chance of having early stent thrombosis and also the late stent thrombosis was more favoring was more with bioresorbable scaffolds than with drug-eluting stents. Then, so absorb cohort A, so to remember few trials, we can just write it in detail. Mainly the absorb 3 trial. Absorb 3 trial was a randomized control trial. It had 2008 patients. The primary endpoints studied were target lesion failure. That includes target vessel MI, the cardiac death, and ischemia-driven target lesion revascularization. In this trial, it was found that target lesion failure composite of all these three was found in 7.8% with absorbed stent and 6.1% with drug-eluting stent, which was Zymes used in this trial. P-value for non-inferiority was 0.007. Based on this non-inferiority result, FDA gave approval for bioabsorbable stent on July 5th, 2016. But subsequently it was found that the secondary endpoints at 1 year was higher in absorbed group, including all-cause mortality. That is 1.1% in the BBS versus 0.4 with Zymes, and cardiac death was 0.6 in BBS versus 0.1% with Zymes, and all cause and in relation to myocardial ischemia and definite and probable device thrombosis, it was 1.5% with BBS versus 0.7 with drug-eluting stent, and the p-value was 0.13. Here also in these two, the p-value was not significant. It was only numerically the secondary endpoints of all these cardiac mortality, MI, then the cardiac death and definite and stent thrombosis was numerically more in BVS compared to drug-eluting stent. In post-hoc analysis, higher rate of adverse events was seen with Absorb. It was found to be Absorb, especially with the smaller vessel diameters. That is, when the vessel diameter is less than 2.25 mm. Thus, FDA gave a labeling that this Absorb BVS is a temporary scaffold that was that will fully reabsorb over a period of time and is indicated for improving the coronary vessel diameter in coronary artery lesion of length less than 24 mm and reference vessel diameter 2.5 to 3.75 mm. So what FDA told was better not to use absorb BVS for vessels less than 2.5 mm. Then subsequently, in a 3-year follow-up of Absorb 3 came. In this, the results of Zine's drug-eluting stents were statistically superior compared to BVS, including lower rate of target vessel MI and stent or scaffold thrombosis. So here also the DAS was found to be better. Coming on to 5-year follow-up, there also the target lesion failure was higher with bioabsorbable vascular scaffold, absorb BVS, compared to drug-eluting stent. However, in this, the important finding they noted was the period of excess risk ended at 3 years. So until 3 years, the late stent thrombosis and this target lesion failure was significantly higher in BVS compared to Zine's drug-eluting stent. Between 3 to 5 years, there was, if we considered only between 3 to 5 years, there was no significant difference between the target lesion failure between the two groups. So I will, one this thing is there, diagram, I'll show you that later. Then various meta-analysis consistently indicated inferior efficacy and safety of absorb BVS with contemporary drug-eluting stent during long-term follow-up. So increased risk and target lesion revascularity, and there was increased risk of stent thrombosis. The number need to harm was about 1 in 40 to 60. Based on all this, Absorb BVS use was commercially stopped in 2017. So it was there in market only for about 1 year. Then Absorb 4 trial also came, in which what they did is, compared to Absorb 3, they made two modifications. That is, they took only the patients, with the target vessels, reference vessel diameter more than 2.25 mm, and they did appropriate pre-dilatation, sizing, and post-dilatation was considered. Then the results in Absorb 4 trial were like BVS was found to be associated with lesser risk compared to that in Absorb 3, but still it was more compared to that of Zine's drug-eluting stent. As a result, BVS even target lesion failure rates were still higher compared to Zine's. The primary endpoints of target lesion failure for at the non-inferiority p-value of 0.02 and superiority p-value of 0.11. So these were the results of important trials on Absorb BVS. Now, in 2018, ESC ECAT guidelines has given following recommendation for these bioabsorbable scaffolds. So it is class 3 level of recommendation. Bioresorbable scaffolds are currently not recommended outside of the clinical trial, class of recommendation 3, and among during 1 year, whoever has been treated with these bioresorbable scaffolds, whether used for stable CAD or used for ACS, DAPT should be considered at least for 12 months and up to pre-specified full absorption of the bioresorbable scaffold, that is about 3 years. So ideally, up till 3 years you have to give. If not, at least up to 1 year, DAPT is recommended as a class 2A recommendation and level of evidence is C. Why these initial non-randomized trials showed that these bioabsorbable stents were encouraging and later on it failed? What could be the reason? On further analysis, it was found that it could be mainly because of larger stent size, which leads to stent thrombosis, and very late stent thrombosis appears to be related to mechanical disruption due to resorption of initially malabsorbed mechanical disruption caused due to resorption of initially malopposed scaffold threads. So this could happen due to any of these mechanisms. So very late stent thrombosis could occur due to these mechanisms like scaffold discontinuity, malopposition, under expansion, uncovered studs, inflammation and resorption, and neoatherosclerosis. Late stent thrombosis probably related to lower post-procedural minimal luminal area and more often seen in vessel with a reference vessel diameter less than 2.25 mm. And another thing was, considering that these stents will not leave any residual scaffold residual polymer, some of the patients were discontinued on DAPT prematurely, and that could be one of the cause for late and very late stent thrombosis. So these were the mechanisms that they proposed. So this is a image showing various mechanisms of failure of bioabsorbable vascular scaffold, like scaffold discontinuity, malapposition, then under expansion, uncovered state. Especially this malapposition is common when during the second stage, that is during the stage of restoration, where some of the scaffolds are, some of the studs are absorbed and some of the studs are still remaining. It causes a mechanical disruption and can predispose to stent thrombosis. And coming on to this image, I just wanted to concentrate on this. So overall, if you see at this image, it is the 5-year outcome of Absorb 3 trial. So considering target lesion failure versus duration, the blue one is for Absorb stent and red one is the Zyme stent. If you take the 5-year outcome, it was higher. The target lesion failure was higher with Absorb stent, and if we consider it up to 3 years, definitely there was difference, and the p-value was also statistically significant, 0.04. But when we compared from 3 years to 5 years, the both Absorb as well as Zymes had a similar outcome, similar rate of target result revascularization. And the probable mechanism being, this is the point at 3 years where the Absorb stent get completely resolved. So after this, probably the target lesion failure rate is similar to that of Zymes. Before that, however, it was statistically significantly higher with Absorb stent compared to Zymes. So that was the outcome they put forward uh, in September 2019 in Circulation Journal as a 5-year outcome of Absorb 3 trial. That's it.
No, I feel this question now it may not be asked because utility is not there. No.
Yeah. It is class 3 recommendation. Just we
Uh-huh.
have to know if somebody may ask in Viva or somebody. That's it.
Maybe they will not ask in theory. Dimpu, any other current applications for this one?
No, actually, though it has been class 3, no, this Magmaris has been continuously doing trials saying that
Yeah,
they have like Dream 2G, Biozol 1, 2, 3, 4 are their trials.
they are
Basically,
founding that metallic base trends are found to perform better than these. They are
yeah.
doing
So
trials. We have to
the
see.
thing is, metal.
Another important future application would be pediatric stents. Where
Yeah,
bioabsorb,
pediatric would.
that's maybe a possible potential use for a next generation platform, not the current one. Maybe the future
Correct.
generation. That's
Tell
so it's
tell JR
still
no.
huh?
Tell JR sir will do RCTs.
Sure.
No data available.
No, the thing is basically this Biozol, I mean, which is Magmaris, is actually a metal base, no? So the strut doesn't need to be that big to give a radial
Yeah,
strength to the thing. So that's why they have shown that it's been always better than Absorb BVS study group. This thing is Biotronic, I think. Biotronic, the Magmaris. So
Nightmare is
the
biotronic.
Biozol 4 is going on now actually. So if it comes to prove that it's better, then the main problem, like Arun told, was actually the lack of
Stretch size.
image based optimization, because especially if you don't have a metal in BVS, you cannot see it in the fluoro well. So imaging was only done in like 30% of patients in Absorb 4 in the form of fibers, and the other 20% had OCT. But Absorb 4, that is why it has actually achieved a non-inferiority status. Others are all actually inferior to DES, but then compared to Zymes, it is a non-inferior study, Absorb 4, just by tweaking the way it is done, the procedure is done. That's one thing. And second thing was that there is one school of thought that the actual maze and outcomes of these biovascular scaffolds should be studied after they have completely resolved. like how Arun was mentioning, no, in that absorb 3's 5-year study, they looked at that 3 years to 5 years outcome did not vary. So, and the mean time it takes to absorb, they say, is 42 to 46 months. So 3 to 4 years. So after that, after the strut has gone away, is there any difference in the outcomes of maize and this thing? Because we know that everolimus, see, absorb stent is basically made up of PLLA strut, PLLA polymer, and on top of that everolimus. So the everolimus being successful, PLLA polymer to use it being successful, we already know. So just that this big strut, if it is gone out of, taken out of the equation, will it actually make a difference in maize? That is what they wanted to see.
But after
so
3 years, patient should be there, no?
Yeah, that's what. So basically,
Patient
that's
should
why.
be-
No, if maze happens to patient, then how will you calculate beyond 3-year maze? Patient
but they
इसमें
had-
होगा तो कैसे पता चले?
There is only
Patient should be
1.5%
there,
difference between
Antana.
Zines and BBS. So patient will be there. 1.5 per patient, 1.5% patient won't be there.
That is there.
I mean,
In these first 3 years, whatever happens, that is very much disastrous, and that's why it was removed from the market.
Dimpu,
I
Ah,
think
ah.
Earlier result,
when compared to this
The-
drug-eluting stents,
Ah.
I mean, why have this stents have come up to prevent what complication? Late
No,
stent
because-
thrombosis.
No, because the thing is, no, the see,
To prevent
remember
what?
the no, if you
specific-
remember, no, if you remember, when I
result
told,
geometry.
no, if you remember the Mitra clip when I was telling, no, in Mitra clip there is a coating of polythene on that. That's a polymer basically. So the polymer basically causes inflammation and granulation. So
Yeah.
it causes it. So once the drug is all gone, what is left is polymer. And if polymer is to be taken out of the account, then what is left is a strut. So they will continuously cause irritation and cause late restenosis was basically the idea behind going for this. Saying that if once the job of actually preventing the smooth muscle cells coming into the part where you have put the stent is done by the medicine, then the thing which has kept the medicine there should dissolve off. That is
metallic
the
part.
Yeah, the metallic part. Yeah.
Oh.
So the difference between this thing basically this Magmaris and other bioresorbable thing is the same. See, Magmaris uses a biodegradable PLLA polymer. So if you take Orsiro stent is actually a cobalt chromium metal on which actually the polymer which holds this everolimus drug is actually coated with a biodegradable polymer. So once the drug is deposited, sirolimus. So the polymer, PLLA polymer, just elutes off. I mean, it's resorbed. But in the same way, basically Magmaris actually is biodegradable PLLA, but Absorb does not. Absorb also has a biodegradable PLLA, but it is not everolimus. It is not sirolimus, it's everolimus. So they're doing a trial based on that. Lokesh?
Darshan had showed a nice picture yesterday, right, on hypersensitivity and how it can cause. That probably
Yeah.
explains why. Yeah.
And this thing, Dipu, what about these drug-eluting stents with bioabsorbable polymers? The third generation stents are there, no?
Yeah. That's what.
What is their status?
No, that they're approved. No, they have
Approved. The outcomes.
No, recently all the stents are biodegradable polymer.
All
Most
are
of them.
biodegradable,
Almost
no?
all are BPDS.
Not our Zines and
No, Zymes is not.
Science is
But
not. You can
So
check.
Whatever, which one? Supralimus is there, I think.
Synergy.
Supralimus
Synergy.
is there, I think.
Synergy. Synergy.
Hey, even
Supralimus and
Rapstorm
synergy.
is biodegradable, so doesn't mean that it is.
no, the thing is the stent, the material, the metal with which the strut is made up of remains even after the polymer degrades. So that is what can cause the
That is
problem.
responsible for this reaction.
Mm.
Okay.
But But I think the only approved stent is Synergy, isn't it, Dimple? Of all the
No, Orsiro also, Varun. Orsiro
no. Of the old, I mean, available ones in India, I'm saying.
Hey, you can choice, sir.
Or
Hey, no.
You can choice also,
Yeah.
I think. You can choice also.
Yukon choice, yeah.
Yukon is there. No,
Synergy.
approved.
Biometric.
FDA.
FDA approved is Synergy. Orsiro is there in India, Varun. It's there. We used in CMC actually.
Okay.
Couple of times.
Orsiro is there in Geneva also.
Yukon
Yeah,
choice is
yeah.
also
Only-
biodegradable.
No, but the point is, recently there was this. If you go to any, this CIR journal site, basically that Onyx 1 study is basically come up. They've basically looked at one month of DAPT with
DAPT.
this Orsiro. So they're like being publicized like crazy. But then the point is, we don't know actually. So ultra thin Orsiro is basically known for this ultra thin strut design, which is less than 70 with biodegradable PLLA, and it actually elutes sirolimus.
60 micrometers.
Hello.
Okay, then I think Lokesh.
Hello, Lokesh.
Hello, audible?
Uh-huh.
This is seen as landscape mode or vertical mode?
Landscape. I
I think
Landscape.
it is landscape.
Okay, fine. Okay, today we'll discuss about DAPT antiplatelets in ACS. So I'll come to pathophysiology of thrombus formation first in a vessel. This is a vessel where you can see there is a site of injury. Once there is a site of injury, there will be cascade of events which will lead to platelet and platelet-rich thrombus formation. First, the number which is given first is platelet adhesion. On platelets, there will be molecules called GP1B9 and GP1A2A. GP1B9 will bind to von Willebrand factor on the endothelium, and GP1A2A will bind to collagen. So once they bind, the platelet is green colored shown here, which is circular. That will undergo conformational change in its shape, and the shape will become discoid, and it will be spiky. After that, there will be degranulation. The two important granules which are important for us are ADP and thromboxane A2. So the shape change and granule release is combinedly called as platelet activation. Once granules get released, the ADP, as you can see in on the right side image, the ADP will induce conformational change in the platelet, and it will lead to exposure of GP2B3A complex receptors. So what is all the platelets will have the platelet whichever will get exposed to ADP will have exposed GP2B3A receptors. So once this has happened, simultaneously the thing which is happening is there will be a tissue factor which will get released from the injured endothelium. That will lead to activation of coagulation cascade and lead to formation of thrombin and fibrinogen. So this fibrinogen is the bridge between the two GP2B3A inhibitors. As you can see in this right-sided diagram, the blue circles are fibrinogen, which are linking the two platelets with their GP2B3A complexes. So by this, a chain of platelets will get formed and platelet aggregation will happen. So as more and more platelets get recruited, more and more ADP and thromboxane A2 will be released. More and more platelets will get adhered to the injured endothelium. Also, the activation of clotting factor cascade will lead to thrombin generation. Thrombin through paroxysmal activated receptor will again contribute to recruitment of more and more platelets. So both the things, the platelet activation and aggregation and activation of clotting factors is happening simultaneously in any endothelial injury. So that will lead to more and more platelet aggregation and platelet-rich thrombus formation. So here fibrinogen also is getting formed. So fibrinogen will polymerize and form fibrin strands. So the fibrin strand and platelet-rich thrombi will form a mesh which will eventually engulf blood cells, RBCs and neutrophils, and form a thrombus, which will eventually contract, leading to organized thrombus. So all these steps are basically our targets for target basis for our antiplatelet drugs. So the COX enzyme, basically thromboxane A2 here. I told you the two enzymes, the two granules which are important for us are ADP and thromboxane. So we have thromboxane A2 inhibitor, which is aspirin. Aspirin, basically, when it is given in low dose, it will selectively inhibit thromboxane A2. When it is given in high doses, more than 900 milligrams per day, it will inhibit COX also. The disadvantage of inhibition of COX is it will inhibit the beneficiary substances also, like PGI2, which is anti-aggregatory and vasodilatory substance. So we don't want that. So low dose aspirin selectively inhibits thromboxane A2 only. So, and phosphodiesterase inhibitor, that is dipyridamole. Important group of drugs is ADP receptor, P2 receptor antagonist. Reversible are canaglilor and ticagrelor. Irreversible are ticlopidin, clopidogrel, and pasogrel. Then GP2B3A antagonist, abscisium tirofiban, eptifibatide. All these we know. PAR antagonist, vorapaxar and atopaxar. Then coming to endothelial function, we saw endothelium functions have three main functions. One is thrombotic function, which we saw above. This is just a image summarizing all those things. It also has antithrombotic functions. How does it function to inhibit the thrombosis? Is once thrombin is generated, as circled here with red, that thrombin will bind to thrombomodulin. That thrombomodulin complex will bind to protein C, which will get activated, and that activated protein C will cause inactivation of clotting factors like 5 and 8A, thereby causing anticoagulatory effect. Thrombin also will act on the thrombin receptors on the endothelium. Once thrombin receptors are activated, they will stimulate the endothelial cell to release prostaglandin I2, nitric oxide, and adenosine diphosphatase, that is ADPase. So all these will cause anti-aggregatory action and vasodilatory action. So via thrombin, though once thrombin is generated, it will lead to antithrombotic action as well as antiplatelet action. Another mechanism by which antithrombotic action happens is there will be heparin-like molecules in the endothelium. Heparin-like molecules will activate antithrombin 3. Once antithrombin 3 is activated, this also happens through thrombin. Once antithrombin 3 is activated, that will inactivate multiple clotting factors, predominantly thrombin and factor 10. Then the fourth mechanism in antithrombotic action is tissue factor pathway inhibition. I told you in the above diagrams that once endothelial injury happens, there will be tissue factor release and activation of clotting cascade. So to inhibit that, tissue factor pathway inhibitory substance will get released, and that can inhibit the cascade. Also, tissue plasminogen activator gets released, and it activates intrinsic fibrinolysis. So by this way, the endothelium has a tendency to form the capacity to form thrombus also when endothelium is injured, and it has capacity to inhibit thrombosis also. So balance between the two usually governs hemostasis normally. This image basically shows the fibrinolytic activity. Once thrombus is formed, tissue plasminogen activator will get activated. It will convert plasminogen to plasmin and will break the fibrinogen. So these are after that, these are some of the diagrams which are showing targets of multiple drugs. All these we know, intrinsic and extrinsic coagulation pathways. Heparin, the mechanism of action of heparin is heparin acts on antithrombin 3, as I told, which inactivates multiple clotting factors. Here, wherever H is marked, those factors get inhibited. Predominant action is on 10A and thrombin. It also activates tissue factor pathway inhibitor, and it has also antiplatelet action. The difference between heparin and low molecular weight heparin is the heparin has a long scaffold to bind antithrombin 3 and factor 10 and 2 simultaneously. But low molecular weight heparin is a recombinant form which is smaller than the heparin, so it doesn't give scaffold to bind thrombin. So it only inhibits factor 10. Coming to warfarin, warfarin inhibits VCOR. VCOR is vitamin K epoxide reductase. You can see in the center vitamin K epoxide reductase, which is important for conversion of NADH to NAD, as well as vitamin K epoxide to vitamin K hydroquinone. Vitamin K hydroquinone is active form which is important for gamma carboxylation of multiple clotting factors like 2, 5, 2, 7, 9, 10. So once VCOR is inhibited, those clotting factors will get inhibited and anticoagulation will ensue. Then this is a fibrinolytic pathway. Plasminogen, after coming in contact with the tissue plasminogen activator, gets converted to plasmin. Plasmin in turn lyses fibrin into fibrin degradation products. So even this is targeted. The activators which we routinely use are streptokinase, urokinase, alteplase, and actiplase. Then coming to this, I already told, this is just arachidonic acid pathway where cyclooxygenase will give rise to multiple prostaglandins and thromboxane A2. When aspirin is given at low dose, that is 150 to 300 mg, 75 to 300 mg, it will selectively inhibit thromboxane A2. But when it is given at higher doses, that is more than 900 mg, it will inhibit cyclooxygenase also, thereby inhibiting all the prostaglandins. PGE2, PGI2 are vasodilatory and anti-platelet aggregatory prostaglandins. So if they get inhibited, that will be harmful. So coming to pharmacology of antiplatelets, the antiplatelets which we use in ACS are aspirin, clopidogrel, prasugrel, ticagrelor, and GP2B3 inhibitors. Aspirin is basically salicylic acid. It blocks COX, as I told. It is irreversibly blocking agent. It is given daily. Peak time is 20 minutes after ingestion. Effective dose which we use is 75 mg to 300 mg. Metabolism happens via hepatic route and clearance is renal. Sorry. Then coming to clopidogrel, ticlopidin, clopidogrel, and prasugrel are prodrugs. They bind to P2-altyl receptor, that is ADP basically, and cause platelet aggregation inhibition. The ticlopidin, clopidogrel, and prasugrel are irreversible. Whereas ticagrelor is reversible and it is direct acting. The remaining details you all know. The bioavailability of clopidogrel is 50%, prasugrel is 80%, ticagrelor is 36%, and canagrelor is 100% because it is used intravenously. It is given intravenously. Half-life of clopidogrel is 30 to 60 minutes. Prasugrel is 30 to 60 minutes. Ticagrelor is 7 to 9 hours. Then onset of action is important. Clopidogrel is the slowest has slowest onset of action, that is 2 to 6 hours. Prasugrel is 30 minutes, ticagrelor is 30 minutes, and canagrelor, because it is given IV, it is 2 minutes. Then duration of effect is 3 to 10 days for clopidogrel, 7 to 10 days for prasugrel, 3 to 5 days for ticagrelor, and canagrelor is immediately, because it is given IV and short acting, it will be immediately waned off. The last point, discontinuation before non-acute surgery. The clopidogrel is discontinued usually 5 days before. Prasugrel needs 7 days at least, and ticagrelor needs 3 days at least. Then the clopidogrel and prasugrel are prodrugs. These prodrugs require a two-step process to get activated, as shown here. Clopidogrel is activated by CYP2C19 to 2-oxoclopidogrel, which subsequently via CYP3A4 will form active metabolite, which is usually less than 10% of the dose which we administer. Similarly, prasugrel will again also undergo two-step activation to form active metabolite, but here it is 75 to 80% of the administered dose. Ticagrelor is direct acting, even it gets metabolized by CYP3A4 and CYP3A5. So all these three drugs will be metabolized by CYP enzymes. So they will the drugs which interfere with CYP will either increase or decrease their effect. So the CYP enzyme induced, these are mnemonics, which I'm following since my UG days. Enzyme inducers, the GPRS cell phone, G is brisiofulin, P is phenytoin, R is rifampicin, S is smoking, C is CPZ, carbamazepine, phone is phenobarbital, and OCPs. All these drugs will cause enzyme induction. That means the enzyme will work more and the activation will happen faster and the effect will be more, because these agents are getting activated because of induction. Similarly, enzyme inhibition won't cause the activation of the drug, so the effect will be less. Mnemonic you can read later. Coming to adverse drug effects of aspirin, these all we know. GI effects, nausea, vomiting, epigastric pain, blood loss, hypersensitivity reactions, and idiosyncrasy. They are infrequent, but should be known. Hello? Yeah.
Lokesh, just zoom out a little bit, no? I think it's going out.
It is going out?
I don't know. I don't know if it's only for me. Others?
No, I have zoomed.
Asthma and anaphylaxis part.
No,
okay.
It is seen, no?
No, I was in landscape. Okay, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
No, this is landscape.
No. My pad, when it is in landscape, it's going out of, but when I keep it normally, it is coming. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Sorry.
Hypersensitivity and idiosyncratic reactions. Then anti-inflammatory doses like 3 to 5 grams per day, which we give in acute rheumatic fever, it can cause salicylism. Salicylism is basically dizziness, vertigo, hearing or visual impairment, excitement, all CNS issues. And it can cause Reye syndrome. Reye syndrome is a fulminant hepatic failure, which is seen in children. When ingested in more than 15 grams to 30 grams, it can cause acute salicylate poisoning. ADRs of clopidogrel and prasugrel are almost similar to bleeding, rash, and thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, which is bleeding is more with prasugrel than clopidogrel. Coming to ticagrelor, again, bleeding is a common side effect. Dyspnea, which occurs in approximately 14% of the patients, as we know, it is because of adenosine. Bradycardia and VPCs, gynecomastia in men. It increases serum uric acid, but it doesn't cause any symptom. It marginally increases serum creatinine, but doesn't need any intervention or stoppage of drugs.
Lokesh, this mechanism of dyspnea, some CNS mechanism is involved, I think, no?
What?
Mechanism of dyspnea and ticagrelor.
Yeah.
What is that? Some adenosine you told, no? That's why I asked. Stimulation of adenosine receptors in CNS, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Coming to contraindication for ticagrelor, any history of intracerebral hemorrhage in the past or active bleeding is contraindication to ticagrelor. Same is for prasugrel. In addition to those two, prasugrel cannot be given if patient has history of ischemic CV also, or even history of TIA. Also, ticagrelor is not recommended in age more than 75 years or or weight less than 60 kg.
Lokesh, the reason is because it causes more bleeding. That is only so reason, or any other reason is there? Contraindicated in stroke, ischemic, even ischemic CVA, TIA also.
Yeah, it causes more IC bleeds.
ICH is a contraindication for tica.
For?
I mean, ICH, I mean, previous.
Yeah, any stroke is contraindication for prasugrel, but my doubt is why for TIA also, why it is contraindicated?
No, no.
See,
See,
Ticagrelor I was asking.
basically in the Triton-TIMI 38 trial, which where it came into place, these were the subgroups which had independent high risk of predicting an ICH. So the any TA or ischemic CVA and age more than 75 and weight less than 60. So for the, I mean, Lokesh will come to the dosing, but the reason is because they didn't predict this, that it would happen, but it happened in Triton-TIMI. So which is why actually since then it has been a FDA black box warning on prasugrel. That's all.
Ticagrelor ICH contraindication, a previous history.
Yeah.
yes, Gautam, yeah.
Okay.
Coming to role of DAPT in ACS, sorry for this is very colored slide. Coming to the point 1 which I have labeled, the clopidogrel, the usual loading dose is 600 milligrams followed by 75 milligrams daily. When it is given in stable CAD, the patient's undergoing, it is given in stable CAD, patient undergoing PCI. In ACS, where you can't give prasugrel or ticagrelor, including those where they have prior history of ICH or there is indication for OSC, oral anticoagulants. So there you give clopidogrel, then that is class 1 recommendation. Also, patients who get thrombolized, second point, clopidogrel is indicated as class 1. The loading dose is 300 mg as we all know. And if age is less than 75, then no loading is recommended. Coming to point 3, in patients with ACS, regardless of initial treatment strategy, patients pre-treated with whether patient is pre-treated with clopidogrel or not, unless there are any contraindications, ticagrelor is the drug of choice. Regardless of treatment strategy here means that is actually a blanket word, but they are not recommending it post thrombolysis. So maybe wrong selection of words here. Then coming to fourth point, in patients with
post thrombolysis now you can give ticagrelor or
based on treat trial we can give, I think, no?
Treat has come in 2018 and 19. Basically, they
but no guideline, no. It will come in next guideline, I know that, but still.
No, here also they say that you can give basically that C, small letter C. This is from STEMI guidelines. No, they say that you have to give it after 48 hours. That's all. The first 48 hours, clopidogrel in 2017 STEMI guidelines.
Okay.
In 2017 STEMI guidelines, if you have to give ticagrelor or prasugrel after aspirin, after fibrinolysis, you have to give it after 48 hours. So what they looked at in treat trial was whether there is any difference if you give it within 24 hours, and they found that ticagrelor is non-inferior to giving clopidogrel even with a loading dose included in patients who are thrombolyzed, out of which I think some around 10 to 15% of the patients who have fibrinolysis had a non-specific fibrinolysis therapy with STK. Rest all of them were specific TNK or reticulase. But irrespective of that, you can give ticagrelor within 24 hours, so it will get included. But even in this guideline, it doesn't say you cannot give. It says you should give after 48 hours.
Is it given like that, 48 hours?
That C, no. You go see that C in the table beneath the table in STEMI guidelines.
Okay, I have not taken it here.
Yeah, you
okay. Ticagrelor over clopidogrel is a class 2A as per ACC-HA. Is it class 1?
Myocardial revascularization guidelines also it is there, I think. Okay, we'll see it later.
See, this table is from myocardial revascularization guideline, and the one which Dimpu is mentioning, 2017.
Your voice is not clear. Hello.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. This table which you have put is from 2018 myocardial revascularization guideline.
It's there in the first table.
No, it is from DAPT guidelines.
No, the same table is there in this thing also.
Yeah, all tables mean the same.
I mean, it's all the same.
I mean, so only thing is what Dimpu is mentioning is given in the 2017 STEMI guidelines.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's what he said. Anyway, I think Lokesh, move on.
Okay. in patient with ACS undergoing PCI, prasugrel can be used when P2I12 in patient with P2I12 inhibitor naive patient with NSTEMI or initially conservatively managed STEMI if indication for PCI is established. That means basically when NSTEMI patient is there, you have to define anatomy and then only give prasugrel. Or STEMI patient undergoing immediate coronary catheterization unless there is a high risk of life-threatening bleeding or other contraindication. So for STEMI patient, you can give prasugrel upfront. So fifth point, pre-treatment with P2 inhibitor is generally recommended in patient whom coronary anatomy is known and the decision to PCI is already made. And in patient with STEMI, you can directly give P2 inhibitors like prasugrel or ticagrelor. In patients with end-stage ACS undergoing invasive management, ticagrelor administration or clopidogrel administration, if ticagrelor is not an option, should be considered as soon as the diagnosis is established. That is class 2A indication.
Lokesh,
yeah.
in this point, you see this the point which you just mentioned, this 2A, and the point which you have marked 3 on the top.
Yeah.
There is a confusion. See, they have written in patients with NSTEMI, ticagrelor 2A recommendation or clopidogrel, and on top they have mentioned irrespective of regardless of initial treatment strategy, it is class 1 recommendation. So there is some confusion. I don't know. Maybe you or Dimpu can clear. I did not understand these 2 points. Hello.
No. Regardless of initial treatment strategy, he means, see, basically, in patients whom you want to give a P2Y2, according to AHA, choosing ticagrelor or prasugrel over clopidogrel is a 2A recommendation. But giving it as a first, like, giving it along with aspirin is a class 1 recommendation in a patient with ACS. But then the fact that you have to choose that over clopidogrel is not as strong a recommendation under AHA. But then ESC 2017 DAPT guidelines say it is class 1. European with the same evidence, ESC considers it class 1, and these people consider it 2A. There's no major difference. But the point is that because both were non-inferiority trials, they were not superiority trials, Plateau and Triton TB 38. So which is why they're saying it's a 2A. You may consider, that's all, to give. It's not like clopidogrel, you giving ticagrelor or prasugrel is superior over that. But ESC thinks that it is class 1 to consider that because enough of it has been actually proven that they are superior. So it's like that. So choosing it over clopidogrel is a class 2A. But then when you want to give a P2Y12 inhibitor alongside aspirin, ticagrelor is class 1 basically.
Okay.
Understood, Gaurav?
Partially, but I don't think this discussion
No, it's okay.
will be better right now.
There is a table between AH and ESC comparison. I'll put that in the group later. You let Lokesh continue. It doesn't make a big difference.
You can upfront load with either clopidogrel or ticagrelor, but not with prasugrel unless you do angio.
Yeah.
That's
what Lokesh just said. Yeah.
Okay.
In coming to stable CAD, in patient with stable CAD, pre-treatment with clopidogrel may be considered if probability of PCI is high. That means if you don't know the anatomy or posted the patient for angio, you should not load the patient, which we do here usually. Stable CAD patient, they usually load before and then take for angio, anticipating ad hoc. That is class 2B indication. And ticagrelor or prasugrel can be used in stable CAD patients undergoing PCI if the ischemic, considering the ischemic and bleeding risk. If ischemic risk is high, you can use ticagrelor or prasugrel in stable CAD patient undergoing PCI. That is class 2B indication. So as I mentioned in last point, in end-stage ACS, in whom coronary anatomy is not known, it is not recommended to administer prasugrel. Coming to duration of DAPT, there are precise DAPT score, and this is basically done at the time of coronary stenting to determine how long we should give DAPT, whether to give it short for 3 to 6 months or whether to give it long for 12 to 24 months based on the parameters which you all know. And this was basically derived from precise DAPT trial, and which was later validated in Plateau trial and Burn PCR registry, which I mentioned on left hand side. So if the score is more than 25, the score of more than 25 means the bleeding risk is more. So you give short DAPT. If it is less than 25, the bleeding risk is assumed to be less, and standard or long-term DAPT can be given. So the right-hand side DAPT score, which is derived from DAPT trial, which is usually comes into action after the patient has successfully completed the DAPT at 12 months. At 12 months, you have to calculate DAPT score based on multiple parameters and decide whether to give to stop the DAPT at 12 months or to continue it till 30 months. So if the score is more than 2, here the more the score, more is the ischemic risk, and less is the score, less is the ischemic risk. So if the score is less than 2, then you can stop the DAPT at 12 months. If it is more than 2, you can consider continuing it for till 30 months. But the class of recommendation for doing this is 2B only, according to ESC. The DAPT score was formulated in DAPT trial, and it was validated in PROTECT trial. So coming to various scenarios, if we are doing a PCI in ACS, the recommended regimen is you give DAPT in either of the 3 combinations for 12 months at least. That is class 1 recommendation. You can give either of all 3. So that is class 1 indication for all 3, that for 12 months. If the bleeding risk is high, then with class 2A recommendation, you can give it for 6 months and then switch it to 1 month. Similarly, if you are doing CABG in ACS patient, again here the DAPT recommended is for 12 months if bleeding risk is low, and 6 months if bleeding risk is less. And if you are medically managing, again the for low bleeding risk, the 12 months DAPT remains same. So for whether you do a PCI, CABG, or medically treat the patient, and if he has low bleeding risk, the DAPT duration is 12 months. What changes is if he has high bleeding risk. For AC, if you're doing PCI or CABG, the duration is 6 months. If you're treating medically, then duration becomes 1 month for DAPT, and then later you can switch to SAPT. This is the table which Dimpu was telling, the comparison between AAC and ESC. Coming to only ACS part of it, the difference here for duration is only for high bleeding risk, the class of recommendation changes in American guidelines, which becomes 2B. In European, it is 2A. This is a table in the recent JACC publication where they have compared ACC and ESC guidelines for NSTEMI ACS. There are not many differences. You can read it off. Even for SEMI, there are not many differences. Those who are undergoing PCI, all 3 are class 1 recommendations.
This is where it mentioned, Lokesh, that's what I was saying. See, this PCI, no, ticagrelor, to choose it in an MI over, I mean, as an additional thing to ASA is class 1, but to choose it over clopidogrel is 2A. That's what. That's a small difference. That's all. It's just technicality. That's all. That is because ticagrelor was not, when you have to say that it is class 1 to choose it over clopidogrel, you should have some superiority trial. There isn't anything which showed that ticagrelor
that is in ASC. We were reading ESC guidelines. ESC guidelines, there is no recommendation of referral over clopidogrel. See, that
no, in medical therapy, you see. Medical therapy.
That we were talking was for PCI.
Yeah, there is a table in the same article which says that basically the choice of peripheral over clopidogrel is class 1 according to ESC. Anyways, go on. It's based on the same evidence. Go on. There's no point of this.
Yeah, there are not much differences, so it is not worth breaking your head. So again, same thing in ACS when you do percutaneous coronary intervention, the recommended DAPT duration is 12 months according to Plateau and Triton TIMI 38 trial and class 1 recommendation. If the bleeding risk is high, that is precise DAPT is more than 25 according to precise DAPT trial, the discontinuation of DAPT can be considered at 6 months, following which SAPT has to be continued. That is 2A recommendation. For biovascular bioresorbable scaffold, like Arun mentioned, the DAPT duration should be at least 12 months and should be maximum at least till 3 years. In patients with ACS who have tolerated DAPT without bleeding complications, continuation of DAPT for longer than 12 months may be considered. The DAPT score which we saw, which has to be calculated at the end of 12 months, but that has a recommendation of 2B. So hardly it is practiced. In patients, last point, in patients with MI and high ischemic risk who have tolerated DAPT without bleeding complications, ticagrelor 60 mg BD for longer than 12 months can be considered. Again, comes from the same trials, DAPT and Pegasus TIMI 54. Again, that gets class 2B recommendation. So beyond 12 months, DAPT is class 2B at present. Coming to patients who has undergone a surgery for stable or unstable coronary artery disease. Again, this we have seen. Again, it is just written in the Word format. This is also a for ACS which will manage medically. Again, I have shown it same in the table, which is the same. Coming to the evidence of all these recommendations, there are multiple trials which has happened with aspirin and all the antiplatelets. I will try to touch most of them. Coming to ticagrelor, the trials which I could compile for ticagrelor are I have listed here. Majito trial, which compared crushed ticagrelor in basically it enrolled a STEMI patient and it gave the routine tablet versus crushed ticagrelor through RT, and to basically see whether crushed ticagrelor has better onset of action and does it improve any outcomes or not. But there was no difference between crushed versus tablet form of ticagrelor. That was Majito trial. The Plateau trial, which enrolled NSTEMI and STEMI patients, which compared ticagrelor and clopidogrel, in which ticagrelor was found superior. Then Pegasus TIMI, I will come to all of these trials. Pegasus TIMI 54. Then Euclid. Euclid was not related to ACS, but I just included it because if somebody asks about ticagrelor, you can write. Euclid was done in peripheral vascular disease, ticagrelor versus aspirin. The result was non-inferior. Then the TREAT trial, which was done after the TREAT trial was the trial which where ticagrelor was given within 24 hours of thrombolysis. Again, it was non-inferior trial. The SETFAST trial is the results of SETFAST trial are awaited, where the thrombolized patient, if suppose the rescue is done or the pharmacoinvasive strategy is done, in that patient, the safety of ticagrelor is assessed in SETFAST trial, the results of which are awaited. Then Atlantic trial, which studied the pre-hospital administration of ticagrelor, which was non-inferior study. Then Global Leaders trial, I will come to that later. Hales and Socrates trials are done in CVA or TIA. Themis trial, I will come to it later. Then ISA React 5 is the latest thing. I will come to all of these. The Plateau trial, Plateau compared ticagrelor versus clopidogrel, and it enrolled STEMI and NSTEMI both, and proved that ticagrelor is superior to clopidogrel. It decreased MI, stent thrombosis, CV mortality, and total mortality, but the bleeding rates were equal in both ticagrelor and the clopidogrel. That is about Plateau trial. Coming to Pegasus TIMI-54, what Pegasus did is it enrolled stable patients 1 to 3 years post MI, and they gave ticagrelor in 2 doses. One is 90 milligram BD and 60 milligram BD, another dose, and compared the 2 arms of ticagrelor and 1 arm of placebo, and found that ticagrelor, whether given in 90 mg BD or 60 mg BD, decreases CV death, MI, and stroke, but increases the bleeding. Coming to TREAT trial, ticagrelor versus clopidogrel in patients with STEMI treated with fibrinolysis. This was a fairly large trial, but it was non-inferior. So there was no difference between giving ticagrelor within 24 hours versus clopidogrel. Coming to global leaders, which was done with Biolimus eluting stent to assess the duration of antiplatelet therapy after stent implantation. What it did is it in 1 arm, DAPT was given for 1 month, and which was followed by only ticagrelor for 23 months, versus DAPT for standard thing, DAPT for 12 months, followed by aspirin for 12 months. So the 1 arm gave only aspirin plus ticagrelor for only 1 month. So DAPT was only 1 month. Even this was non-inferior. Coming to Themis and Themis PCI trial, the subset of patients in these studies were stable coronary artery disease patients who had diabetes. Hello?
Lokesh.
Yeah.
That global leaders trial, it was designed for superiority, but it came out to be the results were non-inferior. So basically it fails to meet its primary endpoint. That is the important thing. It was a trial designed for superiority actually.
Why do you want to know that?
No, because they were trying to compare ticagrelor with aspirin, like whether ticagrelor monotherapy is superior to aspirin monotherapy, which they did not find. That was the important message from this trial.
Okay. Then Themis and Themis PCI trial. As I said, population was stable coronary artery disease with diabetes. In Themis trial, they did not undergo PCI. In Themis PCI trial, this subset of patients underwent PCI. In both these trials, the results were similar. There was decrease in CV death, MI, and stroke, but there was increase in bleeding. Coming to trials with prasugrel, the recently published ISAREACT-5 trial, which compared ticagrelor or prasugrel in patients with acute coronary syndrome. It enrolled ACS patients. It can be STEMI, NSTEMI, or unstable angina. To STEMI patients, prasugrel was loaded as soon as after randomization. And to NSTEMI patients, prasugrel was loaded only after knowing the coronary anatomy, that is after angiogram, but before doing PCI. So what this trial showed was, it showed that the composite of death, myocardial infarction, and stroke was significantly lower in prasugrel group. The all-cause secondary outcome of all-cause death was not significant, and even major bleeding were not different. So it proved a superiority of prasugrel over ticagrelor in terms of primary outcomes. Coming to Triton TIMI-38, which is an old trial which was published in 2007, which compared prasugrel with clopidogrel. And the problem with this trial currently in today's era is it used bare metal stent in 48% of the patient and drug-eluting stent in 47% of the patients. So here prasugrel, the primary endpoints of CV mortality, non-fatal MI, and CV was significantly lower with prasugrel. But the bleeding rates were more with prasugrel. Coming to trialogy essays, another trial comparing prasugrel with clopidogrel. This trial was non-inferior. You can remember that only. There, and this is the trial from which the recommendation comes where prasugrel is not indicated in medically managed patients, because all the subset in this trial was medically managed patients.
Lokesh, so even after knowing the angio also, it is not recommended, no, ideally. Even after angio also, some people try to give it for thrombus containing lesions and all, no? But that is not recommended, no, as per this.
No, nobody's giving. Who gives?
Few people have given, I've seen, but that is not recommended, right?
No. Coming to DAPT trial, which was published in 2014.
This Lokesh, what you told that prasugrel in medically managed patient in trialogy ACS, what was the problem with it?
No problem. The primary endpoint of CVD, MI, and stroke was equal in both the groups between prasugrel and clopidogrel. So they say when clopidogrel is equally effective in medically managed patients, why do you want to unnecessarily give prasugrel, which has increased risk of bleeding, which is proven in so many studies? That form the basis that prasugrel should not be used in medically managed patients.
Okay, fine.
So coming to DAPT trial, DAPT trial involved it was done to assess the effects of continued dual antiplatelet therapy in patients who completed 12 months DAPT after drug-eluting stent PCI. So you can continue DAPT after 12 months to 18 months or more, or you can give aspirin with placebo. So the result, the stent thrombosis rate was significantly high in placebo group as compared to the combination group. Then the bleeding risk was, but the problem was bleeding risk was more with the combination group. In DAPT trial, clopidogrel was used in 65% of the patients, and prasugrel was used in 35% of the patients. Coming to ACCOST trial, which was the subset of patients which were chosen in ACCOST trial were basically NSTEMI patients who underwent angio, coronary angiogram. After coronary, before the trial actually was meant for pre-treatment of the NSTEMI patients, because we are continuously saying that you should not give prasugrel without seeing the coronary angiogram, without knowing the anatomy. So this trial looked at what will happen if you do give it without knowing the anatomy. So they gave 30 mg before the coronary angiogram, and if required PCI, and if PCI was required, they loaded 30 milligram after knowing the anatomy. And in the another arm, they loaded 16 mg prasugrel upfront. But there was no in both the arms, there was no difference in death, MI, CV, or revascularization. But both the groups had significantly increased risk of bleeding. So this is another basis to recommend against giving prasugrel upfront. Another old trial, TL PASS, which studied aspirin with prasugrel versus aspirin with clopidogrel in paclitaxel-eluting stents. Here, the death and stroke was equal, but my MI and stent thrombosis were significantly low. But the bleeding was more in prasugrel group. It was only numerically more, not statistically significant. So this trial can be considered positive, but the stent used was paclitaxel-eluting stent in that. With ESC guidelines mentioned that proton pump inhibitors are class 1 indications for all patients who are on DAPT. Coming to clopidogrel.
The proton pump for what duration?
Till you are giving DAPT.
Are you sure? Huh?
Yeah.
Usually we give only for initial days, no? Like in our setup, we give only for
that is there, yeah.
No,
Guidelines
that is
mention till
okay.
the patient is on DAPT, you have to give PPI.
I don't think it's reasonable. Only
Hey,
European is
Varshit, it is correct only what Lokesh is saying.
no, that is okay. But does ACCH also tells the same, huh?
ACCH says if you have increased bleeding risk, but then or if the patient has had a previous history of any gastric ulcers or all those things. But then the point being that there is no harm in giving. No, there is no interaction or anything like that with except
That I
with,
agree.
that's
That I
all.
agree. I'm not talking of the interaction. That I agree. Clopidogrel pentoside interaction is more of a theoretical and in vitro than clinical.
No,
But
as
That
opposed
is
to
omeprazole. That is not pantoprazole. Pantoprazole has no interaction.
a PPI, I mean, general, I'm telling. Okay. But the thing is, 75 milligram of aspirin, basically, that is the more problematic drug, no? Aspirin is more problematic than.
so aspirin related bleed is proven to be lesser with PPI. In fact, that was one of the confounding things in aspirin when they looked at aspirin for primary prevention. No. Yeah, so PPI was given only in 1/4 of the group. So PPI is known to prevent bleeding. So you have to give it's class 1 according to
Europeans, no?
Coming to clopidogrel, I have not covered all the trials of clopidogrel. I will just enlist the trials. You can read them later. Cure, Credo, Charisma, Comet, Current Oasis, Gravitas, and Clarity. More important thing is newer trials on antiplatelets. There is one recent article which mentions all the recent trials which have come from 2016 onwards. We have seen global leaders treat an SREX5 out of those. We'll see remaining now. So this is a list of trials which were done with the DAPT, short-term DAPT ranging from 3 months to 12 months, which were compared with long-term DAPT from 12 months to 48 months. So basically the topic of the interest is now whether we can give short-term DAPT or not. So there are multiple trials which have happened. Reset, Optimize, Excellent Security, ISR Safe, I Love It, IVAS, XPL, Optima, Prodigy, Italic, Arctic. All of these were either non-inferior or were superior. So that means we can actually shorten the duration of DAPT in future. So actually, when the recent most ACC and this table also gives that which of the trials were available when the guidelines were made. So most of these trials were not available. Recent trials were not available when these guidelines were made, but some of them were available. But most the ones which were available were non-superior. The ones which have proven superiority have come up now. So in future, when DAPT guidelines may get updated, the duration of DAPT might significantly shorten. I will come to majority of these trials. Again, one more table showing same thing that almost all the trials were proven non-inferior. Sorry, I'm switching my thing to vertical now. First is global leaders trial. As I discussed in this trial, the aspirin plus ticagrelor was given for 1 month, and then ticagrelor was continued for 23 months. Versus a standard thing which we do, aspirin plus ticagrelor for 12 months, followed by aspirin for 12 months. This was non-inferior trial. Then in 2019, stop DAPT2 trial came, which gave DAPT for only 1 month and then continued clopidogrel for 5 years. Versus the standard thing which we do, that is 12 months DAPT followed by aspirin. This trial proved superiority in terms of primary outcomes as well as secondary outcomes. Primary outcomes of CV, death, MI, stent thrombosis, stroke, bleeding were all significantly less as compared to standard DAPT regimen. So stop DAPT2, which is giving only DAPT for 1 month, was proven superior, and even the patient number was quite large, that is 3,000, around 3,000. Coming to SMART DATE trial, SMART DATE trial basically gave 6 months DAPT followed by aspirin, and it compared with 12 months DAPT with aspirin. Here, the problem was it increased the incidence of myocardial infarction. So this was a negative trial. Another trial, SMART Choice, where again 3 months DAPT, similar to the above trial, that is stop DAPT. SMART Choice gave DAPT for 3 months here and continued by followed by only P2-ITIL inhibitor, as versus the normal thing which we do like 12 months DAPT followed by aspirin. This was non-inferior in terms of primary outcomes, but it significantly reduced the bleeding. So again, this trial can be considered positive because it is not inferior, but it is decreasing the bleeding risk by shortening the DAPT duration. Then came the Twilight trial, which again gave the DAPT only for 3 months, and after 3 months only ticagrelor was given. This trial, the feature of this trial was the patients enrolled were having high risk of bleeding and high risk of ischemia, according to the result of this trial is the primary outcomes were significantly low. The primary outcome they measured here is only bleeding. So that was significantly lower in Twilight trial, despite giving DAPT only for 3 months and followed by ticagrelor versus normal DAPT, and despite giving it in high-risk patients. So that is again a positive trial to shorten the DAPT. Then came the TICO trial, which is published recently in 2020 April, which gave aspirin plus ticagrelor for 3 months followed by ticagrelor again, versus normal DAPT which we give. It used the Orsiro stent. Again, this is a positive trial where the major adverse cardiac events were significantly low and bleeding was also significantly low. So recently, many larger trials have come which have shown short-term DAPT is superior to standard DAPT which we are using. So maybe when next time DAPT trials, DAPT guidelines are updated, the duration of DAPT might come down to 3 months.
Lokesh, this TICO was superiority trial or non-inferiority?
I don't know the design, man. 1 minute, it is written here.
Point.
TICO was superiority.
And Twilight was non-inferiority.
Yeah.
Okay.
But TICO is placebo control, not placebo controlled. Twilight is placebo controlled. That is important. Though both have similar designs. And TICO used only ACS patients, Twilight didn't. And Orsiro was the only stent used in TICO.
Hello?
Okay, my thing is over. Last trial is a tropical ACS trial where they tried after completion of 12 months of DAPT, they tried to de-escalate the
Hello? Hello?
Hello, yeah, done. This I was planning to put, but GP2B3 inhibitors actually should be mentioned under, if they ask role of antiplatelets in ACS, then GP2B3 inhibitors also should be mentioned. But this I could not.
Yeah. 2B3A have to be told. They are also antiplatelet agents.
लोकेश 200 ट्रायल पढ़ा दिए तूने.
मेरा ही सिर दर्द हो गया.
2B3A, I just wanted to tell that I don't know, when I came to Jaydeva, actually it was a shock because all the centers outside use Agramed and this thing at much higher dose as what we use. So in case somebody asks, like, you know, it's actually, it comes up to around
50 ml per hour actually, I think.
Yeah, it comes to around 10, about 10 only.
4 vials at least over 24 hours. We are giving 1 vial for like.
No. The rate at which we said no, Lokesh, that's 7 ml per hour.
Half dose actually.
That's actually, yeah, it's half dose. Ticagrelor.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What am I saying? The Agramed, tirofiban. Yeah. And eptifibatide more or less comes up to, for a 60 kilo man, it comes up to 9.5 ml per hour something. So we keep somewhere around.
If I have the
what?
Whatever I remember is Agramed, tirofiban, you need 3 vials over 24 hours. And eptifibatide, you need 4 vials, I think.
Yeah, no, but the point is that see, the thing is basically
this is what recommended, and we are giving only 1 vial.
Yeah, no, what is importance of that is that when they saw in trials, no, when like they have basically done a lot of this, like, you know, Esprit for eptifibatide, and then there's one thing called as Impact 2, and like, you know, I think if I'm not wrong, something, I mean, Restore, I think, for tirofiban. So these trials basically looked at escalated grading up doses at which, and there is a very peculiar mechanism for this GP2-3BA. It's basically that if you inhibit 70% of the platelet receptors, there will be absolutely no response, no increase in bleeding time. If you inhibit 80% of the receptors, there will be slight increase in bleeding time, and suddenly the graph takes up. Like, you know, at 90% inhibition, the bleeding time is actually prolonged 3 times. There's no linear curve. So they specifically say for GP2B3A, if you are underdosing, then it is as good as not giving. And so you have to give the bolus in the recommended dose, in the recommended way, like how it is recommended way is 3 minutes for tirofiban, and eptifibatide, I think.
And we are not giving a bolus also.
Yeah, and they definitely, and they say that basically, like, you know, if you give 80% also, it's as good as giving nothing. So I've asked this multiple number of times in cath lab when I was in post cath. They said that no, you give it at the same dose. The same thing in CMC, we used to give it at 12, and we had the chart. Based on the chart, like, you know, 12 to 15 ml per hour it will come, basically for a 60 to 70 kilogauge. This tirofiban I'm talking about, eptifab.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Agramed. And intracoronary boluses also, which we give, that also is actually less only, because they give 20. I mean, one small vial they give. That's not how it is calculated. It's actually 180 micrograms per kg. I think 180 micrograms per kg is the bolus dose for eptifab, and you give 2 boluses 10 minutes apart. That's how it is. Intracoronary.
And Dimpu, this ACCHA, they have clearly written, they have written right now that the routine use of PPIs is class 3 in patients of low GI risk.
That's what I told. That's what I told.
So
basically.
Maybe so. No. Recommended as a 2A for those on high risk, but for routine use, it is class 3. Maybe that's why our people are not giving.
No. It'll change. Varshit, you just read Ascend and Aspri, these 2 trials. You will understand what I'm saying. They're all after the DAPT guidelines have come.
But the ESC, the basis of recommendation for ESC to give class 1 for PPI is the paper on clopidogrel with or without omeprazole. So that is the only analysis of that trial that they have given class 1 recommendation.
Yeah, see, I have calculated this once for Agramed, the dose which is given in guidelines. According to that, for 60 kg person, you have to give bolus of 30 ml first, followed by 11 ml per hour. That comes to 225 ml. So you have to give 2 vials if patient is 60 kg. If he is 80 kg, then you have to give 3 vials, that is 300 ml. Same for eptifibatide also, which is for 60 kg person, it is 200 ml, and for 80 kg person, it is 270 ml. So
see, it comes up to 9.6 ml.
Yeah. So basically, we should give 2 to 3 vials at least. We are giving half dose. and without giving bolus.
Integrilin, yeah, that's the and
Lokesh,
just
yes, what is the low dose we should give? Like, okay, 30 ml we have
Lokesh,
to
share
give.
this in the group, no? Share this in the group. It's a
Yeah,
nice calculation.
I've shared in the group.
You
I'm
have?
actually playing it from the group only. See.
Oh, okay. Basically, the aspirin in that picture which you put now about the trials which are coming up, there are some couple of interesting trials which are coming up with aspirin. One is Andaman, that will be very easy for us to remember. Andaman trial, and the other one is actually adaptable. These both are on aspirin. One is actually looking at see, basically there's a
Are they published already or not?
no, they're not published. No,
Yeah,
what I'm
because
saying
the
is
chart which I showed, those two trials are there in that chart, but I did not find the results.
no, they're not published. Adaptable is basically looking at the concept of this optimum loading dose, 81 versus 325 mg, basically. So because there are some trials, like if you see a lot of clopidogrel add-on trials, Credo, Clarity, Capri, all this, they have added, like Credo has randomly added 162 mg of aspirin, 81 into 2.
Okay.
Like, so there is no basis for actually the loading dose, exact correct loading dose of aspirin. So they're looking to sort that out. And the other one, Andaman, is actually an interesting thing. Basically, the concept that when the aspirin reduces thromboxane A2, you said, no? So the thromboxane A2, replenishment after you stop aspirin, or in the patients who are on aspirin, if you stop aspirin, they found that the replenishment was much higher in patients with the diabetes, actually. So, and there are other non-platelet means of replenishment of thromboxane A2 also. So, which are so-called the reasons for aspirin resistance. If you were to find any in the ADP, I mean in the trials, basically. So, how you measure aspirin compliance is also by measuring urinary thromboxane B2, which is basically an esteroid form of thromboxane A2 in the urine. So, Andaman is looking at whether once daily or twice daily aspirin is good in diabetes. The so-called diabetes is one of the main reasons for aspirin resistance. And Adaptable is looking at 81 versus 325 mg as a loading dose in various reasons why aspirin should be indicated. Just to know, that's all. And Tera PCA, we have anyways discussed, ISA reactive discussed. Twilight and Tico have the same thing. Twilight and Tico basically are looking at ticagrelor monotherapy instead of ticagrelor. I mean, basically they're excluding clopidogrel from the group. That's all. And ticagrelor, this Tico was presented recently. They have multiple comments about it because the event rate was much less than expected. They had the primary outcome which included bleeding, which was actually the main reason by which the primary outcome was actually driven. So things like that. So they called that outcome NACE. None of the people have actually included bleeding. They suddenly included bleeding and they called it NACE, saying bleeding with MACE as NACE, net clinical adverse event.
Clinical adverse events.
So the point is about aspirin. It is important to know that actually the chewing form of aspirin has a 4 to 6 hours head of, as compared to enteric form. So it is, if we are giving ecosprin, it is must that we should actually make them chew it and have it when the loading dose is given.
Bite and swallow it.
Yeah. That is something which is practically important. Practically important. And other thing is clopidogrel can be given whichever way, but anyways, Credo trial was the first one which looked at the timing in clopidogrel. They looked at when it was given before PCI as an adjunct to aspirin, whether there will be improvement in outcomes, and they found that anything lesser than 6 hours failed to meet the outcome. So the additional effect of clopidogrel loading of 600 mg for PCI, according to Credo trial, is basically proven that if you give it less than 6 hours time, it's of no use actually, because they've shown that when compared to less than 6 hours, it failed to reach the outcome. So that whatever outcome benefit which was there for giving additional loading in PCI was actually only if you have given at least enough time of 4 to 6 hours. So what we do in our cath lab routinely, like loading on the table, doing it immediately, entails us to use a proper GP2B3A or Canglener if
Canaglilor and
both, yeah, both these are not. If in patient, if you don't have GP2B3A, currently there is enough evidence with Champion trials and Cantic trial with Cangrelor use. Otherwise, you should use GP2B3A in a proper dose because you are sure that clopidogrel would not have started acting. So, which this is something which we need to be aware of. We don't do this.
Even if we give 600 mg clopidogrel within 6 hours, it is not going to have a benefit. Dimpu? Hello? Hello?
रूजा भाई डिम्पू वॉशरूम गया शायद, उसके जिप का आवाज आया।
बैग पैक कर लो, अरे वहां पे भी चेन होता है।
क्या हुआ?
बैग पैक भी तो कर सकता होता है।
Meet, where are you, man?
Arun, good night.
Hey, you're in hostel, Night
Arun,
you did duty, no?
Arun, you don't need to break these silences.
Why? चलो।
Suddenly क्या silence हो गया इतना?
Arun is independent, man. He can do anything he likes. You mute your mic. You that.
क्या हुआ वर्षित पूरा जीपी में?
हाँ?
ईपी में क्या हुआ आज?
कुछ नहीं हुआ. Nothing.
सौरभ क्या बोला बेचारा?
सौरभ क्या बोला? वो जेपी उसको बहुत डांट रहा है.
हमारे ऊपर से?
हाँ, क्योंकि तुम लोग नहीं है, सौरभ और तुम फेलो ध्यान नहीं रखते कि लोग नहीं आ रहे.
तो क्या बोला सौरभ ने? तुम्हें कुछ बोला क्या?
सौरभ ने बोला कि यार तुम ऐसा मत करो, फिर प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है, तुम
ओए
लोग
वर्षित ये सब रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है वैसे.
ठीक है भाई.
Okay, that will go to YouTube.
Okay, just
it's okay. I'll cut the last parts.
Hey, that's a nice idea, Varun. Actually, how this thing, how long does it take to upload our? I mean, how big are these files? I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, so there are various sizes. So the one that gives reasonable quality at reasonable size is about 250 to 300 MB. So the problem is YouTube does not let you upload beyond certain. I mean, unless your account is verified and that can be.
Okay.
Yeah. Now that that's done, it's quite painless. In fact, I'll be uploading this later. It should take me maybe 5 minutes.
Okay, nice. Anyways, like I said, basically it's very easy to access Google Drive and YouTube. I think it's a easy way to revise.
Yeah, just to keep things together. See, for example, this one would be easier to listen to rather than read it.
Yes.
I don't think anybody can read Lokesh's notes, unless you have an audio. So, for this talk, specifically for this.
Correct.
Because there's too much information, it's easy to miss.
So. Yeah, and one more important thing about this aspirin is that NSAIDs will block its this thing, basically its effect. So NSAIDs not to be given with aspirin because they competitively compete for that site on cyclooxygenase 1. Anyways, nice presentation, Lokesh. You told most of the trials, despite being averted to trials. That's the
right.
You all, why? God knows. You only are like running away from trials all the time. तुम्हें पता नहीं है.
Running away from remembering the trials.
No, I don't want to remember the trials. They are not. I'm not going to use the trials. I'm not going to throw a trial at somebody.
Throw a trial at somebody. Good one. Okay.
I'm not going even to practice the trials, man.
No, I will practice what is there in the guidelines. If they get updated, I will also update myself according to guidelines.
We can't afford to change practice every 6 months.
No, whatever is reasonable, obviously.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Anyway, Lokesh, nice presentation. Arun, if you're still online, thank you.
Arun, thank you. Nice presentation.
Yeah, we will.
Hey, this thing, this YouTube you have uploaded. No?
What, Arun?
No, this is not yet uploaded, man. You can watch it later.
No, he's
No,
muted
no, no.
himself in a hurry.
I'm just telling in YouTube, whatever you're uploading, whether it is like anybody can see like that.
No.
Yeah.
No. No.
Yeah, no, Varun, it's coming
Only-
up on general search.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing with Arun. But,
No.
I didn't get that. Okay.
Because sometimes we just leniently speaking.
Yeah, see, guys, Dimpu, I wanted to ask: should it be made private to access only for us, or let it be public? I mean,
I don't know if you are editing out this crap in the end. I think, I mean,
No, listen,
it's fun. Huh?
Switch it off. After almost 2 hours, who will have stamina to listen to all this crap?
no, what I'm saying is, who will want to actually listen to that anyways?
No, but
So,
yeah, I know. But see, the thing is, it all comes up in search.
it does. Yeah. You can make it private for it, makes sense.
I don't know, but I guess I just wanted it to be on the public domain anyway. So, if it is fine with all of you, because it's a lot of, collaborative things going on, I don't want to. If it's fine, if it's fine,
information wise, it's okay. It's just that some sensitive thing, if we talk and it comes up on YouTube and someone pulls it up, it'll be an issue. That's the only thing. Like
no.
keep
See,
discussing about
all this
JP.
last bits I will remove. Right? It's not even going to come on. Right?
Yeah, and
that's
it's still
okay.
fun. Yeah.
All right, then it's fine.
Okay.
All right, guys. See you
Thank you.
tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.